Okay, thank you, Pan-san. Thank you for your introduction. So my paper today is about the archive or planned archive plan diagram of by Matsuzawa Yutaka. So let me just share my PowerPoint with you. So the Matsuzawa Yutaka is a well-known Japanese conceptual artist. He was born in Suwa. It's about 170 kilometers northwest of Tokyo in Nagano Prefecture on February 2nd, 1922, and died there in 2006. So this year is Matsuzawa's 100th year anniversary, and there is large retrospective at the Nagano Prefecture Museum. And Matsuzawa began devoting most of his practice to language-based works in 1964. Well, this is a map of Japan. So Suwa is kind of in the middle of Japan. It's in the mountain area, but there's a Suwa Lake. Anyway, after his death in 2006, Matsuzawa's house lay empty for almost 20 years. And most of the post-1964 materials and artworks were stored in the Kura, a traditional storage building behind the house, while others were left lying here and there within the house itself. Besides Matsuzawa's language-based works and manuscripts, there is a vast amount of documentation of exhibitions and projects he had organized, as well as works and materials by artists from all over the world. There have been little attempt to examine the materials left in the house until a group of scholars, including myself, began investigating them in 2012. What struck me as curious was the amount of other artists' materials, which account for over half of the whole. Why did Matsuzawa gather other people's materials to such an extent? It is evident that he collected them intentionally, rather than just letting them accumulate over time. So after a year of investigation, I realized that there was a trace of attempted organization of some of the materials. This diagram of an archive or archival institution of his and the other artists' work and activities was given to his student in 1974. The title of this attempted archive is Expose, and the both side arrows, Total Communication. Below the word expose, there are Japanese translations of the word that are 1. Revealing secrets and plans. 2. Endangering oneself to risks, criticisms, and influences. 3. Being open to a certain direction. 4. Unmasking one's true nature. 5. Being exposed to the sun, wind, and rain. 6. Disclosing hidden areas. And 7. Revealing the entirety. These indicate that the Matsuzawa was trying to build an archive which reveals the true nature of the activities of he and his collectives, and by doing it, trying to open it to the different disciplines, analysis, and wider audience. The diagram consists of 4 overlapping circles. On the top right is Nirvana, group activities. Below that is Bigakko. That's an alternative art school where Matsuzawa taught, and DCCA, that's stands for Data Center of Contemporary Art, for which Matsuzawa asked various artists to send information, and X. The time span of the diagram is roughly from 1969 to 1974, when he was most active with Nirvana, a group of artists around Matsuzawa. These 5 years also coincide with the post-1968 period in Japan, when the student movement was in decline and the dream of revolution had virtually collapsed. Some young people sought for an alternative life close to nature outside the big cities and formed various communes. This was also a period of going back to the deepest radical in the peripheral, as Ota Ryu, an ex-Force International activist, advocated. What Ota intended was to germinate a new revolutionary movement by the oppressed in the peripheral areas such as Okinawa and Hokkaido, but revolution apart, there was a general tendency to look inwards, searching for the root of one's existence. Matsuzawa's interest in nature and the prehistoric religion and culture of his home area of Suwa was of long standing, but it was after 1969 that he started communal activities in earnest. In 1970, he and his friends built a meditation platform on mountain land owned by the Matsuzawa family in Suwa, where they staged various gatherings and performance events. As seen in the diagram, Nirvana group activities were mostly staged in Suwa and surrounding area by the artists themselves, shunning any publicity or even an audience. It may seem rather an idyllic and perhaps even escapist action, but at the time it was a radical statement against a society that was promoting material wealth through the huge Osaka World Exposition of 1970 under the slogan of progress and harmony for mankind. So now let's look at each circle. The circle 1 is Nirvana. Matsuzawa organized an art exhibition titled Nirvana in 1970. It was held from August 12th to 14th at the Kyoto City Art Museum with 85 artists participating. Most of the works were conceptual and in forms of text, photographs, plans, documents, and actions. For example, this is the art, mail art sent by Stanley Brown. Some of the participants continued to associate with Matsuzawa and later became known as the Nirvana Group. The collective consisted of various cores. This aggregation of loosely connected independent units was what Matsuzawa advocated as a united cause. It was not a secret society or religious organization or the hierarchical cult-like group with Matsuzawa at the top of the top that it was later mistakenly thought to be. The We Nirvana Manifesto, written in 1972 to 73 by Matsuzawa, said, Nirvana can be described as a united moving bodies. It is a commune-like coalition of moving bodies that have different foundation philosophies, geographical and situational backgrounds. Each body has its core. The core has relatively equal centripetal and centrifugal movements. Both movements should be respected. At the extreme of the centripetal movement, each core's expression, attitude, mind, and desire can be co-owned by all. But even when the cores have centrifugal movement, each should keep a friendly eye on others, give advice, cooperate, sympathize, accept, and reach out to co-own one another. So they are to work, research, and create together. They organized various exhibitions between 1969 and 74, which were listed in a diagram in the chronological order. It includes the End of the Illusion Named Art exhibition in 1969, Nirvana exhibition, Onre, that was outdoor sound and performance event in 1971. This is the group communal picture of Onre, where they performed in the middle of night without audience or by themselves. And also World Uprising, they organized an international mail art project between 1971 and 74, and 2 exhibitions being open and catastrophe art in 1972. Okay, and another circle in the diagram is Bigakko. Bigakko is an alternative art school in Tokyo established in 1969 by Gendai Shichosha, a radical publishing company founded in 1957 by Ishii Kyoji. Matsuda taught a class titled The Final Art Taught there from 1970 to 1980. His class curriculum took up a different subject each week, such as esoteric Buddhism, eschatology, semantics, anarchism, utopia, etc. The students were to read about these topics, and then one of them would make an oral presentation, followed by class discussion. Documentation of the work and thought process of this class would be a part of the planned archive. Apart from his class, Matsuda's diagram also include education on design, dance, music, film, and theater, all of which were taught at Bigakko. The director Ishii had an ambitious plan to franchise Bigakko all over Japan. The plan was to found branches of Bigakko in places where teachers lived, and by organically connecting these autonomous teacher-student cells to spread Bigakko into various locations. In 1973, Bigakko Suwa opened with the final art taught class taught by Matsuzawa and contemporary music taught by Kosugi Takehisa. The brochure introducing Matsuzawa's class states, Matsuzawa Yutaka, who is feared and respected as one of the most extreme art thinkers, is going to give a workshop from September 1973. His curriculum will touch the radical questions concerning artistic expressions, such as what is the ultimate state of art attainable by thought, and whether art making is possible at all. And the third circle in the diagram is DCCA, Data Center of Contemporary Art. This imaginary center was established by Matsuzawa using Bigakko as its mailing address. He sent out letters to his artist friends and institutions overseas, asking them to send information about their works and activities. He intended to create a database of all these artists and institutions. DCCA was to archive their information, materials, and documentation in the forms of actual works, text, memos, audio tapes, photographs, film and video, magazines, and catalogs. The institutions that responded to his request, including CAYC here, that's an institution in Argentina, Head Museum of Finland, SUM in Iceland, WORKS in Canada, Art and Project of Netherlands, Image Bank, US, File Magazine of Canada, Something Else Press, Accumulatory 2 Gallery in Poland, etc. And many artists from all over the world sent Matsuzawa their cards, mail art, catalogs, including prominent international conceptual artists such as Lawrence Wiener, Douglas Hubler, Gilbert and George, and the Fluxus artists Dick Higgins and George Maciunas, to name a few. Matsuda's intention was for the DCCA to plan exhibitions, seminars, lectures, conferences, and artist and institutional exchanges. It was also to publish newsletters, magazines, annuals, book of theories, anthologies, and monographs. This is one example, the catalog Catastrophe Art and newsletter of Nirvana exhibition. The aim was to have facilities for silkscreen and other printing and film video workshops, as well as to provide spaces for meetings, research, and storage. And the circle X, the fourth one. There's an in and out arrow that indicate exchange of ideas on language, philosophy, science, religion, art, everyday reality, and other genres. This part X was to be open to those different disciplines and the outside world. Another in and out, the arrow indicates movement of a large number of people. As early as 1956, Matsuzawa was writing about the importance of an interdisciplinary approach, as in a letter to an art critic, Takiguchi Shuzo. Matsuzawa wrote, "In order to enforce the power of art to appeal to all human beings, we need to fill the gap between different disciplines such as art, science, and philosophy. In order to achieve it, it is necessary to take cybernetics seriously in art. This issue of communication requires further examination. If not, artistic expression will be inadequate." Had it been realized, this exposed total communication would have become the first artist-run archive-based research institution in Japan. In the later 1970s, Matsuzawa attempted to catalog all the materials sent to him, but it seems that his interest gradually waned and the bulk of the materials were left piled up in the storage house. Why he abandoned this idea of creating archive is still unclear. But even though it was not materialized, Matsuzawa's interest in creating an archive and a research institution based around it was quite innovative in the 1970s, when the word and concept of archive was unknown in Japanese art circles. In order to understand Matsuzawa's intention in proposing this archive, it is important to examine how he defined art. For Matsuzawa, art is not the expression of artist's self. Rather, art starts from the solution of artist's self. There is no longer a hierarchical value system, and everything is equal and infinitely free, even from material restrictions. Expose total communication was to accumulate this kind of free art from all over the world. But what is free art? Does it mean that anything can be art? His call for contribution to DCCA did not specify what kind of art should be submitted. Although Matsuzawa knew most of the artists and institutions he wrote to, his request was quite open-ended. They could send anything related to their work or themselves. What Matsuzawa was aiming for in accumulating documentation can be seen in a memo he wrote about 2 years later, in which he used the term free document instead of art. He wrote, "It is better to call it a document than art. Anything can be included in that. Therefore, it is absolutely free document. After one's death, a collection of things, including things, incidents, and thought he believed in would be extremely valuable heritage for human consciousness in the future. Yes, it will be the next art. I came up with this thought at 4 a.m. on January 24th, 1972. Matsuzawa then further explained what he meant by free document in relation to death in another undated memo. He wrote, "As it is inevitable that we will die, we strive to leave something behind, anything. It doesn't have to be art. In all of or in preparation for death, we want to leave something. Or even we don't have to actually leave a thing. We are driven to do something as we felt death in the most sensitive part of our heart. It can be evidence of our lives in the form of any petty thing or action. And that is what I call the fundamental of art. We regarded art as something gorgeous, exuberant, and valuable, and preserved such things. But other than those treasured, there have been smaller but nobler things, actions, and thought that were dedicated to death. They are the final proof of our lives as human beings. These things and actions will remain even after humanity has disappeared." Here, Matsuzawa declared that a document that replaced art was a proof of one's life, which could be a small thought, a slight gesture in the face of death. These immaterial documents would be the proof of our existence long after our material existence ends. Matsuzawa's understanding art here is quite different from accepted definition of at the time, or even now. To achieve such art document proof was not to treasure artists' works and preserve their legacies as museums and other institutions intend to do. Rather, it was to record art as a primordial or action in the face of death, as a proof of life. So in a way, Matsuzawa's idea was very much ahead of his time. Matsuzawa was very interested in scientific development, especially in cybernetics. He mentioned its importance already in 1956 in his letter to Takiguchi. He wrote about mail art as communication that creates an imaginary space, and that in the future, telepathic immaterial communication would be realized. Matsuzawa perhaps intuited the future of communication in cyberspace, but did not live to fully utilize the technology. If he had been born in the internet age, his plan for the exposed total communication archive would have been quite viable. Documents could have been gathered not only from the artist's friends, but also from a much wider spectrum, in larger numbers and easily shared. So Matsuzawa's imagined archive is not to pay homage to Matsuzawa alone, nor to be a collection of valued objects. It should be an active archive where materials and information can be examined, reinterpreted, and renewed. It should not be confined to art and art history, but rather should expose itself to different fields of study. Such fluidity is perhaps unimaginable to most art institutions in Japan, but I believe that Matsuzawa's vision of archive should be recognized in the future. So now, this from 2018 to 2020, Matsuzawa Yutaka Psyloom Foundation, of which I served as a director, and Tokyo Bunkazai Kenkyūjo, Tokyo National Research Institute for Cultural Properties, collaborate on listing and some digitalization of Matsuzawa's materials. So it is our hope to realize the cyber version of exposed total communication archive and make it available to public in the future. Thank you very much.
OK，那非常感谢Shimada桑给我们做的这个介绍啊，因为这个项目其实我也因为这个 Shimada桑的关系2018年的时候跟着他一起去了一次这个松泽的这个在长野县取坊的这个旧宅，那也去看到了他的一些收藏，那还是非常震撼的，因为他2006年去世之后，他的一间房间里面的很多的东西也就没有再碰过了，就是他保持了这个原状。那么他的这个房间本身也似乎变成了一种档案的状态。当然我刚刚听喜马拉雅在讲的过程当中，我觉得其实松泽的整个的一个对于档案的想法，其实是非常好的，可以呼应德里达之前我介绍的这个死亡冲动的这样的一个理论，但是它其实是有进一步的延伸就是说它的这个它把档案跟人都就是放在同一个它并没有区分就是说人跟档案之间的这样的一个绝对的这样的一个鸿沟，但是它的这个档案肯定也像人的生命和死亡一样，不断的是处在一种流动的、活跃的、开放的这样的一种状况之下。那我觉得其实这个案例也可以给我们很多提示。那接下来一位讲者，这个曹朱贤女士，她是目前是这个综合平台Drifting Colloquium 的成员与策展总监这个平台以新的学习形式进行多学科的策展研究和项目和实验。他亦担任延世大学传讯与艺术研究院文化媒体特聘教授，并在韩国科学技术院人类史研究中心担任副研究员。那曹女士她基于她敏锐的这个当代叙事的这个研究通过过去5年来一直在一民美术馆策划和监督的10多个重要的展览项目以及出版物，以极具实验性的形式捕捉并且呈现了紧迫的社会议题中被遮蔽的部分。另外，他也一直在展览中策划通过戏剧表演、后戏剧和游戏等多样的这个媒体实验，在观众参与、社区和档案艺术等领域寻求新的艺术形式。那么今天他要给我们分享的也是我们这本书里边的由曹女士她写的这样的一个章节，那么是更多的关于这个档案和社区的建构的这样的一个经验。好，那我现在就把时间交给曹朱先。